She sometimes complains that in spite of the double doors she and her colleagues paid to have installed, the offices aren't adequately soundproof. I listened for voices. Maybe she'd lost track of time. All quiet. It would be uncomfortable if I interrupted a session she was conducting with an emergency patient. On the other hand, even if one of her patients had shown up unexpectedly, full of angst and suicidal ideation, Annabelle would have taken the time to warn me that lunch was off. She knows how I get if I don't eat. So I knocked, first a quiet tap-tap, then a more robust rat-a-tat. She didn't answer either one. I trooped back down the stairs and checked my cell phone again for a message. As I pushed open the door, I heard a dull buzz. A tall woman with a fringe of blonde bangs and a slight baby bulge at her middle was stabbing at Annabelle's doorbell. "Did you come from Annabelle's office?" she asked, a frown on her face. "She's not answering." "She doesn't appear to be in," I said, not responding to the woman's barely unspoken question, "Are you one of her patients too?" "Crap," she said with a small stamp of her foot. "I hope she didn't forget. I hope she's okay. I really need to talk with her today." She ripped a page off the pad hanging near the doorbell, scrolled a note, and tacked it to the mini bulletin board screwed to the wall beside the door. She glanced at her watch. "Retail therapy instead," she said, brightening. "Even better." I smiled tepidly and watched her stride down the sidewalk toward the New Haven Green, trailing tendrils of perfume in her wake. Carrying a caseload of therapy patients is a little like having small children. Even when they're concerned about you, they are most worried about the effects your problems may have on them. Psychology types call this transference. Buried childhood feelings rippling forward and settling into the current therapeutic relationship. New therapists find it curiously uncomfortable when grown adults relate to them as if they were a parent. Their parent. But it's the nature of the beast. Transferring conflicts from their past to your present. And it's what allows therapy to work. As Annabelle is forever reminding her office neighbor, Dr. Fraser, if you need nurturing, look outside your practice. I scribbled my own note. A. Was here for lunch. Hope you're okay. Call me. R. I no longer had time for the trek to Lewis's lunch. Besides, it wouldn't be the same alone. So I stopped at Clark's Dairy Restaurant on Whitney Avenue and picked up a cardboard container of pea soup and a grilled cheese on rye that shone with grease through its waxed paper wrapper. Then I left the restaurant and returned to my office. Sigh. This was winter comfort food, not a spring splurge, and not nearly as satisfying as that burger would have been. I used the remaining minutes of my aborted lunch hour to choose a question for my advice column and rough out an answer. I'm a clinical psychologist by day, but in the off hours, I whisk on my advice columnist cloak and write the Ask Dr. Astor column for Bloom e-zine. Sometimes the column feels downright silly, other times profound. I love it most when it evolves into a Greek chorus of my life that I didn't consciously intend. This month, my 12-year-old, a slight exaggeration, editor, Jillian, had asked for columns that fit the category Bloom in spring. In other words, no downers, no freaking stages of grief, no miserable housewives in housecoats abandoned by their freshly vital, chemically driven husbands. The advice should be uplifting, encouraging, bursting with new life and new possibilities. Sigh again. Happy people don't ask for advice, I told her. You'll come up with something, she chirped back. I'll check in with you later in the week. Dear Dr. Astor, I volunteer at a local charity that fights mental illness. I got involved because I believe in the cause, but I also hoped it might be a way to meet a nice guy with similar interests. Isn't that what you always recommend to your readers? The people on my committee are smart, caring, dedicated, and all married, except for one widower who's slightly older than me, though smart and attractive. Lately, the married folks...